Shit Moms Won't Say!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. My name is Jess Ader-Ferretti, and tonight I have on a lesbrarian. That is a lesbian librarian. But that's not what's super cool about her. My friend Melissa Cody has a story that needs to be heard and needs to be normalized. She is someone who chose to become a single parent. It's an incredible journey, and I am so excited for her to share that with you guys. Welcome, Melissa Cody. And then
Thank you, Jess.
Thunderous applause and all those things that I'm sure all the people in Facebook and YouTube land are doing. Welcome to my little slice of heaven show. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. It's been a while since I was on a Zoom. We've been out of school for a while, so get my bearings back.
We'll get there. I promise. Certainly will. To level set, because I've been sort of doing this with everybody. Like, you and I know each other a super long time. Like, we know each other a long time. Like, we used to go to Lux together. Like, and it's so cringy. And Zen and all of those, like, horrible Long Island lesbian nights that I couldn't do it if I wanted to anymore. Like,
they don't exist. They don't exist.
Lux is was a thrift shop that closed down.
Oh.
But even if it did exist, it's like 2 hours past my bedtime.
Yep.
So life changes, but it's very cool to come full circle and have, an old party friend who is now a super cool mom. Definitely. So we're going to jump into the Big Mom 3. So show is out there in the universe, so you're probably aware of what the questions are. That's okay. First question, did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Sort of follow-up question. So we're going to get into your story. Do you want more children? Is this something like, I don't know.
It's tough because he's so fabulous. Like, I wouldn't want to, I got so blessed with him that, like, I wouldn't know what to do with a child that was difficult at birth. But also I am 43 and there's a reality in that. And, like, I was 42 when I had him, and I don't feel like, I still feel young. But I am definitely more tired than I used to be. And so I know that a day chasing him around, like, I don't know that I could chase 2 around by myself for sure. So I'm really happy where we are right now.
Awesome. And asterisk, by the way, like, if I don't look like you when I'm 43, I'm going to jump off of my roof. So I'm 34, so we'll see how it goes. Second question, and this is probably a really fun one for you just as a single parent. Because I'm sure you've gotten a lot of it. What is the like shittiest or most backhanded advice you've gotten from another mother?
So I did know this question, and I have to be honest with you, I couldn't think of anything. So, like, here's my thing. So here's the other thing. I'm maybe kind of insulated from other moms. Maybe it's my age. Maybe that, like, people just figure I thought so long and hard about what I wanted to do that they weren't going to say stupid stuff. And the people I did encounter while I was pregnant and at work, was at work, and, like, you didn't have a lot of time for that. I think the dumbest thing that I could think of that anybody ever said to me was I didn't want to find out what he was before he was born. So I was thrilled enough that the IVF took, that I was having a baby, and but that's the first question people ask, right? What is it? It's a human. What are you having? And I would say a human, and people would be like they didn't know what to do with that. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to say? And one person actually said, well, how are you going to prepare? As if a newborn boy or girl would be so different. I said, what do you mean? They're at birth, they need diapers, wipes, and onesies. Like, they literally need nothing else than that. And the onesies even negotiable.
Associated colors. How are you going to do a blue?
How are you going to paint? And that was the other thing. I said, I am a single parent in a 1-bedroom apartment. He's going to sleep in my bedroom, which is green. So I'm not changing any color. And in fact, I painted this wall behind me because this is like this is the living room, but this is as much of a nursery or playroom that he's going to have. And it's yellow. So,
You know,
that's it.
listen, we have a girl, and her room was gray, and we knew we were having
Right.
a girl, so
Exactly.
get fucked, right? Big deal. That I think that's shitty though. Like for me, we had to find out because we're both like I couldn't function if I didn't know. But I think the element of surprise is the element of surprise no matter when you find out. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, last of the Big Mom 3. What is like one skill or like superpower that you had before becoming a mom that you feel has really helped you as a mom?
To exist in organized chaos.
Okay.
So, like, I know where everything is, kind of thing, but it might not look so neat. Like, this is the neatest part of my apartment right here. This is why we're looking at this part of this is why we're looking at this wall and not anything out there. Because a baby is chaos, total chaos. And like, I am a pretty, like you said, like I am pretty regimented about certain things. Like my day has to, I get up, I do this, I do that. And so like those kinds of things had to change. But yeah, being able to kind of roll with the chaotic punches.
It's a good one. I've had a couple people say, because Cat's Out of the Bag, I don't film this in order because it doesn't matter. That they're like, well, I'm so incredibly organized and that's super helpful. And like for me, like I'm a psychopath. Like if I were to turn this on my desk, you'd be like, boy, everything has a place, doesn't it? So for me, like it was a learning curve. Like I had to be okay with shit all over my house.
Yep.
So I think that's an exceptional.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go a little bit different than I normally go. So normally, like I'll set it up with a couple of topics, but I think your story is such an interesting one that I literally just want you to tell it. Again, it's something that's not normalized in our society. People think of parents as a husband and a wife having a kid. After that, if you're cool with same-sex marriage, which if you're not, don't watch this fucking show. And I got other things to say, but it's not nice. You know, two parents having a child. You actively chose to have a baby by yourself. And I'm sure no matter how kind people have been to you, you've definitely had the experience of people turning their heads and saying, oh boy, that's something. So I'm gonna shut up, which is really hard for me to do, and I'm sure I will jump in, but I'm gonna sit back.
Okay.
And I will let you tell your tale.
Okay, thank you. Feel free to jump in. So
I can't control myself. I already am, so go ahead.
But that normalized, I think that normalized picture that you're talking about is like what I always live with. So you were like, have you always wanted to be a mom? And that question is hands down, absolutely. Like I pictured a family and, you know, like that's how we grew up, right? We read fairy tales and there was always the happy ending. And there was always, like you said, two parents, man and a woman and a baby. And I first struggled with coming out even because of that normalization. Like I was like, no, everybody marries a man. Like every woman marries a man, period, end of story. And I'm just going to have to deal with this way that I feel. And just everyone must feel like this. And they just do that because that's what people do. And so I didn't come out until I was 28. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
28.
I was, 28.
Wow.
So like
I met you gay. I met you super gay. I already knew. I said, she gay.
But so that took me a while, right? So like I was still dating men unhappily and still picturing that and et cetera. And then I started dating women and that just never worked out. And I got to be like 35 and I was in my OB's office and she is a wonderful human being. And I was like, listen, I really want a baby. Like, what are my options? Can we talk about how my eggs are doing? Like, I really was like, can we get a lay of the land? Can you just let me know if I'm okay? Or how much time I have. And she was like, I was like, no, because I need this. So aside from the normalized picture, there's also that picture that like, you must have a secure job, which I've had, right? Librarian, teacher, I've had that. But like a home, and not just a home, a house. Like for me, that image was always a house. I'm like, but I don't have a house. I have an apartment. And she was like, so what? And I was like, and I'm alone. And she said, I said, I need a house and I need a partner and I need that. And she goes, do you want a baby? I said, yeah. She said, have a baby. She might have cursed. That's debate, you know. but she said, have a baby. Like that, those other things may come. Your baby is you have a time limit, right? Like, unless you want to adopt, which is a totally different story, or foster, or do all of those wonderful things. I knew I wanted to carry and birth a child. Like that was the other part of it that was important to me. And so obviously I waited a little while. At 38, I had a little bit of a midlife crisis and went through a bad breakup and went to a fertility clinic. Finally, I went back to that OB and I was like, what do I do? And she gave me the fertility clinic and I went and I was like, okay, again, lay of the land. How are we doing? And she said, you should freeze your eggs. And I was like, whoa, I'm not ready for that. And isn't it very expensive? And like, that's the only thing I had heard. And at that time, 38, that was 5 years ago, 2015, like people, I feel like as I've done it, and unless it was just something that I paid more attention to, like it's more common with younger women, especially professional women, like in their early 30s, are talking about, like I've heard women of means in particular talk about how that's a gift they give to their daughters. Like their daughters are professionals, they're 30, they are eventually, yeah, I know.
If
that's
the frozen eggs?
No, like to pay for
no,
to
I
pay
get
for the
it.
process.
But if somebody ever offered that to me, I'd be like, just give me the cash for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Right.
What a shitty present.
Yeah. So she convinced me, this doctor, to freeze my eggs, and that required 2 weeks of shots all the time. And then she said, so first she got me convinced to freeze my eggs, and then she was like, embryos actually freeze much better. And at the time, I was still holding out hope for a partner. So I was like, I'd really like for like the baby to maybe like we'd pick a donor who resembled my partner or who had similar, but whatever. That was my image still. So I was like, no embryos. So we went through the whole process. I gave myself the injections. I did all the hormones. I turned into a crazy person, and they took my eggs out. So summer when I was 38, I got 10 eggs and we froze them and I closed the door. I was like, all right, we're going to move along and we're going to see how this works. I can't remember. When I was 39 or 40, maybe 40, that I just kind of, a relationship was not on the horizon. A person was not coming. And I was like, this is what I want. More than anything. And again, I have a time limit. So even though the eggs were frozen, I was like, no, but I don't want to be 50 and having a kid. And again, feeling old, tired, chasing a kid around.
Sure.
So we defrosted my eggs, and I picked a donor. I went through California Cryo. I went through a bunch of profiles. I had all this criteria. I actually sat down with my family. My sister, my brother-in-law, and my mother all helped me like narrow it down and make the final choice. Well, the final choice was up to me, but they helped me narrow it down. So I picked a donor, defrosted the eggs, tried. Of the 10 eggs, 6 defrosted, 3 fertilized, and 1 barely made it to the day. Like there's a stage, it's supposed to be a blastocyst when you implant.
Right.
It was a morula, which was the stage before.
You got to get the education, huh?
Yeah, I really got it.
Those words sound made up to me. That's like,
I had the diagrams. Well, that was the other thing. I was like, this should be easy. Like, as far as I know, I have no fertility issues. Granted, I'm 40, but my extended family, my cousins, like nobody's ever had trouble getting pregnant. This is an infertility treatment, right? Like IUI, IVF is treatment for infertility. So if I am a fertile woman, as far as I know, this should work. So there was never like a doubt in my mind. I was like, no, this is going to work. It didn't work. The doctor was like, it's not really ready. I was like, well, I'm ready. So let's just give it a try. So we tried. It didn't work. I then tried.
And you did IUI first? Or you did IVF right away?
Well, that was IVF because it was my frozen eggs.
Right. Yep. All this
So,
lesbian terminology it's throwing me off. I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah. So most people start with IUI, right? And they start with just trying the insemination. But because I already had the frozen eggs, and again, so while it wasn't super expensive, it wasn't super cheap either. So like I had paid for that, and I was like, well, no, but I have to use them. Like I'm not going to leave them sitting there.
For the asterisks, most insurance companies don't cover that treatment.
Right. They don't.
They don't.
I
love it. I love your careful response. I love it. And I appreciate it. Yes, they do not. And I can say it. They don't cover it. And that's really fucking shitty.
They don't. And I was actually lucky that they covered the parts that they covered, because there are lots of people for whom they cover zero.
Us. Doctor did it for free.
Really?
Our doctor did the insemination for free because she was like, wow, that's bullshit.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and the drugs too. The drugs are so expensive. Like, so luckily my drugs were covered. My drugs were always covered because my drugs are under my union. So like my healthcare is here, and then my union pays for medication. Like I have a medication plan through my union. So that was covered because they considered it a cycle, which they do pay for. They do pay for infertility treatments, but right, not if you like can't, right. So I was doing IVF without doing IUI. If you start with IUI, more is paid for. So that didn't work. I tried a couple of IUI into the school year. They didn't work. And like one day on an IUI day, when you're like waiting for the phone call, so you know this. But for those of you who don't, when you've done IUI or IVF, the fertility clinic takes a blood test. What did I do? A blood test? And I can't even remember now.
Like my wife carried. So I mean, I was educated as we went along. Mm-hmm. I forget what the blood test is for, but yeah, they test your blood once a month, you know?
Well, but even before that, just to find out if you're pregnant, just to find out if it took.
Right. That's right.
You go in for a pregnancy test, it's a blood test, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll call you in 3 days. And it's the most agonizing 3 days of your life. You're like, I was at a baby shower the day that I found out, like, the second IUI didn't take. And I was just like, okay, I need a break. Like, I can't keep doing this. And the hormones, and I was at school, and I was teaching, and it was hard. Like, there's a lot of ups and downs. So that part of it was probably hard to do on my own. Even though I have my family, I'm still, like, emotionally on my own. So then I took some time off. I waited till the following summer, tried another IUI, because as you know, you have to buy all these sperm vials as well. It's one vial per treatment. So then you have to spend all this other money. Right.
Sperm is not cheap. For people to literally just give it away on subways, it's not cheap. Like, truly, like, the amount of times that I've been like, oh, that's sticky. Like, $900 later, I'm like, I could have just taken that from anywhere.
Yeah. Yep. So I tried that IUI over the summer. That didn't work. So then in August of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I went through an IVF. We did a fresh IVF cycle because the doctor was like, this isn't actually, the doctor that I saw after that hadn't worked was not my doctor. Okay. This particular office had gotten very busy. They were acquired by a hospital, and all of a sudden had many, many, many more patients. So I saw this doctor who didn't really know my story, and she was like, okay, so we'll try another IUI. And I was like, no, we won't. We're doing IVF. I have one vial left. I'm not buying anymore. We can't spend any more money. Like, this is happening. We are doing IVF. And if it doesn't take, and I had gotten to the point, as emotional as I was, like, where I was like, this is it. If this doesn't work, it's not supposed to work. Because I had gone through, like, the gamut of emotions.
You had done all that.
Sorry, I'm making this story really long. I hope this is okay.
No, it's an amazing story, because people don't really know what goes into getting pregnant when you don't have a man and a woman, right? No. To not even have two men or two women that are supporting each other through it, you're not making it long. It's a super relevant and interesting story. So, please, yeah.
But even like when hetero couples can't get pregnant, like people don't talk about that enough. People don't talk about infertility. They don't talk about infertility. They don't talk about pregnancy loss. They don't talk about any of these things. Like, it's like, oh no, you want to get pregnant, you get pregnant. Like, that's what you do. And no, that's not what you do. It's not what anybody did. And anybody who tells you they got pregnant on the first shot, okay, like maybe you're a fluke, like you're a special person. Most people have trouble, even heterosexual couples for whom it's supposed to work, at like whatever. So I remember I was upset, and this doctor was like, "Don't be upset," and I was like, "No, that's not helpful. Not helpful. Not helpful. Don't tell me not to cry. I'm allowed. Like, I should be emotional about this. This is emotional. I'm upset." And I was like, "No, we're doing IVF. That's it. Period. What's the next step? Get me my drugs. What do I have to do?" And so it was like the last couple of weeks of August. And I did all my shots. I did everything I was supposed to do. I went in, they took out my eggs. They got maybe 6 this time. They got far fewer eggs. And then they fertilized, and only 3 took this time. So that was another agonizing thing, right? So you go in, so like you said, like take your blood once a month in the beginning of the process. And while you're doing the fertility treatments, like with all of the drugs and the hormones, they're checking you every couple of days. So like I practically looked like an addict. Like my arms were all bruised up because I'd go back and I'm like, "Do you want to switch arms?" They're like, "No, we got to keep going at this one." Because they had to make sure that all your levels were correct.
Right.
So I had become very close with there was a PA in the office who was absolutely amazing and so empathetic and so wonderful. And so on my day, like I knew they were going to call me. I was at work. My sister was at work. And so like my sister and my mother were really my people. My brother-in-law is amazing, and he was there too. My father was great, but my mother and my sister were really like, I wouldn't be here without them. And so we're all on pins and needles, and they know. And I was like, all right, today's the day. Like, they're going to call me. What do we do? And when I had done the IVF the first time with the frozen eggs, and we waited, or with the IUIs, whatever it was, like there was a day that we had waited with bated breath to like listen to the message together. Like I had gone to my sister's house. I saved the message. I didn't look at it. And this day, and that day they called me late in the day. Now this day, I get a phone call early. I'm still at work, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you guys, it's the office. What do? I think I happened to be sitting in my office at work. I have an office. So I was on a prep or my lunch, and I called my sister, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? We were supposed to wait. I was supposed to come see you. We were supposed to do this in person, but like, I don't know if I can wait knowing this message is here.
No.
And knowing that I have visual voicemail where like, if I press it, it transcribes it.
Anyway.
So the whole thing is there. And I was like, guys, I have to listen. So I actually called, so like on my work phone, I called my sister, who called my mother. So the 3 of us were on the phone, and I put my cell phone up and we listened to it, and it was Danny, and she was like, "Melissa, I wanted to call you myself. I didn't want one of the nurses to call you. I am so excited to tell you." And I was like, "Oh!" I'm like crying in my office, and my mother's crying, and my sister's crying. We're all screaming like a bunch of lunatics. And that was it. That was like the beginning of school of a couple of years ago. And then I had to keep it to myself because I was like, okay, I gotta, everyone knew what I was doing. So that was the other thing. I was very open with my job about it. Like my principal knew, because the first time I had gone for the IVF, like that's a procedure. Again, like they tell you, they met out your drugs, and then they say, okay, so based on your hormones and based on this is when you're going to come in. So it's not like 2 weeks in advance, you're going to have a procedure, right? So all of a sudden they're like, so listen, I was like, listen, this is what's happening. I have to have this. It was the first week of school. So then I felt like I had to tell her. So then when it did work, it was the same timing. It was the beginning of the year again. It was a procedure. It might have been, it was like a professional day. So we didn't have the kids yet, but I told her I was having a procedure, and then I waited, and I made sure I waited. So then it's agonizing to wait for that positive, right? So that positive pregnancy test is agonizing. But then it's a further wait because then you're like waiting to see the embryo develop. And I was in that fertility clinic every week, right? So they're watching the baby, they're waiting to get to a heartbeat. And then once they get the heartbeat and you get to 10 weeks, then they release you to your OB. So my sister and or my mother came with me to most of those, which like, that's another thing. People now can't have people with them. So like, if I was doing this now, I'd be in that office by myself. So I say I did this by myself, but I didn't do this by myself. Like my sister and my mother and so many people were mentally, emotionally there for me. I couldn't imagine trying to do it right now.
I don't know how women are doing it right now. In general, I don't. I mean, it's
right. Right.
Yeah.
So I remember too being released. So I'm released to my OB, and I go in and I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have sonos like every week, right? And she's like, no, we'll see you at 20 weeks. And I was like, oh no. She's like, yeah, you're not high risk. I said, what do you mean I'm not high risk? I'm old, honey. She was like, you're not. You're in good shape. I was like, I'm 40, what, 41? I was like, I'm 41, I'm over 40. 35 is geriatric. Like, what are you talking about?
Which hurt.
And she was like, well, I know, it is. But that's the word they use. So, wait, actually in my chart, it said elderly. Elderly, prima gravida. Don't butcher me, doctors and nurses. I know that's not right. The terminology is for a first pregnancy over a certain age. They use the word elderly. So that was awesome. But she was like, you're not high risk. I was like, I am high risk. I am. You're gonna need to make sure. Like, I was a carrier for something. So another factor in this story is that my sister lost her third child. So she has 3 kids now. She's 2 girls and a boy, but in between the girls and the boy, she lost a girl at 38 weeks.
Oh.
So we were hyper aware, obviously, of everything that could go wrong. And she was a carrier for a blood clotting disorder, my sister, and I had gotten tested for that, and I am a carrier as well. So I was like, no, look, carrier, like, doesn't that help? Put me in the, so they agreed. I was high. I had to see a hematologist who was like, no, you're fine. But you know what the hematologist said? This is crazy. I was like, well, do I need, so my sister had taken, for my nephew, she had taken blood thinners by injection her whole pregnancy. And I was like, well, don't I need that? Like, don't we need to prevent this from happening to me? And the hematologist, who is strictly a research person, like, I didn't realize that. Their job is to come in, evaluate, and literally go back to their desk, go through all the medical journals, find the research to support or deny what you think you need. And she was like, the research doesn't support it until you have a loss. Oh, so I have to lose a pregnancy when I'm over here paying? No. So we came to a thing that I was just going to take a baby aspirin. The high-risk doctor was in my doctor's practice. So, like, I went every time she was there. I saw the high risk. So that let me get more scans because I was so nervous. And leaving the fertility clinic, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I've been here for years. You people have been taking my blood.
No,
You've been doing that. The amount of friends that I saw come into that place and leave pregnant, and I was still like waiting, was difficult. There were definitely 3 to 4 lesbian couples that I knew that went in and got pregnant. And I was still like, so by the last one, 2 of my friends and I sat down in the waiting room. I was like, oh my God, and it's a bit, for a lot of people, it's a secret. Like, people have told me, like, oh, we're not telling anyone. And I was like, no, I get it. And it turns out that, like, with the timing, I was getting, like, my last testing before the IVF. So I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And they were like, oh, we're just getting her eggs frozen. And it turned out that the other one got pregnant. It was just this really funny kismet kind of thing. So, yeah, babies everywhere. And now, like, I wanted a baby so much earlier, but if any of those times had worked out, I wouldn't have him. It wouldn't be this baby.
I know we're not showing pictures of it. You got pregnant in August.
Yes.
So what is your son?
Oh, I didn't even, that's actually not even, I think it was September.
Really?
But yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Hold
on. Not even,
okay.
Nope. It's a book reference. So I didn't want to find out what my child was going to be. So I had a list of names, and both lists were headed by characters in books that I love. So, as any good librarian.
Of course.
So, August, or Augie, is the main character in Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Mm-hmm. And I love that book. And cool. Augie is like this amazing character. And it was funny, we were going between, because then, you know what? That's what you never tell people. Never tell people what you're thinking of naming your kid. Because you do not want to hear what they have to say.
We don't want to hear their opinion. We knew what we were having, and we knew what we were naming her. So it wasn't a like, we're thinking. It was a like, right. Here's her name. Mm-hmm. Move on.
Yep.
But that's a good one. That's like, people really have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
You know what? And in my head, I didn't put together, like, of course it's a book reference. Like, why wouldn't it be? That makes a lot of sense. I was like, he was obviously conceived in August. No. All right. No. Not the first time I'm wrong. Won't be the last. I promise.
It's not a terrible. It was a decent guess. It was a decent conclusion.
I think that story is amazing. You know, and again, it's something that people don't hear enough of, and they don't understand what goes into getting pregnant in general, right? Like you said, it doesn't matter. It could be a heterosexual couple, it could be a gay couple, it could be a single gay woman, it could be a single straight woman. It doesn't matter. There's so much that goes into it. So by the time you have a kid, you really want that kid.
Yeah.
You know, you really want that baby. And I think that some people don't get that 100%, whether they're not parents or they're people who had a really easy experience getting pregnant. So I'm gonna shift gears. I'll go back into my regular deal here. I have a question. So single parent, doing it on your own. And I know you have, an awesome support system. What is the best thing about getting to do this by yourself? And then the follow-up, of course, is what is the worst thing about getting to do this by yourself?
So a friend of mine actually said it perfectly when I was pregnant. They're kind of the same. So, right, like it's the same thing almost. That's the easiest thing and the hardest thing. The best thing is that I get to make all the decisions. But that can also be the hardest thing, right? Because there are times when I'm like, well, I don't know what to do.
I have a suggestion. You can consult any mom group on Facebook. They're really kind to each other.
Right. That I have no desire to do. So, like, usually it's something that, like, I'll ask my sister, I'll ask my mother, and who have plenty of opinions and are very good at not giving them to me all the time. So that's the other thing. Like, I'm a member of 2 Facebook parent groups. One is called Queer Parents, and one is called Queer Single Parents by Choice. So there's actually many of us. And that's a really nice supportive space. And I have not, because I haven't encountered anything big. So the thing is, I've been really lucky. He's going to be 15 months old any day now. And he is healthy. And he sleeps. And he eats. And I nursed him until he was 13 months old. He made that happen. I can say I did certain things, and the doctor, I go into the doctor, and I'm like, I don't know, it's all good. Now, my pediatrician is a friend of mine from high school, so that's funny. So, we know each other in a different way, but he's like, no, you're laid back. I guess I'm more laid back than I realized. The other thing is, my sister has 3 kids, and I was, 4th parent to them.
Yeah.
That's third parent, sorry. So, in a way, he's, my 4th child. So, in some ways, he's my first, right? In all the pictures and all the, no, I'm going to, cocoon him as long as I can. But then I'm like, oh, he's walking over there. He's fine. Whereas people are like, oh my God, where's he going?
You have experience. Yeah. You know what it is. He's fine. Yeah. He gets, banged up. It's no big deal.
So it's those 2 things. My answer might be needing somebody in the middle of the night, but I haven't needed that. in the very beginning, when you're a total zombie and there is no sleep to be had, and you're just like a feeding machine and a cleaning machine and a whatever, and like you said, the house is total chaos, maybe that would have been nice, but like I was nursing anyway, so what would have been the difference? Somebody would have brought me the baby, and like I'm in a 1-bedroom, so the baby's right there, and I'm going from here to here,
Right, doesn't
nursing
matter.
half asleep. Right, it doesn't matter. So for now, it's double-sided, the decisions.
Okay, well, speaking of needing someone in the middle of the night, and I know, you know, we got to catch up a little bit before this, and I was like, are you dating anyone? How's it going? And you're like, no. It's not, you know, obviously right now with everything going on in the world, and, you know, I know you're going to head back to school in September, and I want to know what your thoughts are on that in a second. What does dating look like for a single lesbian mom who, you know, is raising this little guy on her own? Or is the answer, I don't know, and that's okay too.
The answer is totally I don't know, with like one of my famous 10-hour long explanations. I've only recently started to think about it, right?
Okay.
So he was born, and like I said, like nursing for 13 months, I was like, no, this is who I am. I am here for my child. Like that was and I actually used to think if I had to, and I still say it to people, like, I don't have to worry about anybody else's feelings. Like, I only have to be available to this child.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to, like, I put him to sleep and I'm done. I am on this couch and I am reading a book or I am watching television. I'm not like, honey, what do you need? Now, I get that other person would theoretically be helping me with the child, right? And would, I wouldn't necessarily be so tired or emotionally drained, but I'm the type of person that I feel like I would still be that, you know, like I would still put in all that effort. So to think that, I've only very recently, and like I said, he's going to be 15 months old. I've only very recently started thinking about maybe dating. But even then, I said to somebody, I'm really happy parenting him by myself. Like, I'm really happy being, so like, what does that look like? Am I going to date somebody and tell them, well, yeah, I have a kid, but I don't want you to ever parent that. I mean, and obviously that might change, right? Like, this is early for this. Like, I can't speak to what may or may not happen. But right now,
when I air this, you don't want me to put like an arrow pointing to you that says like single and your phone number.
You could say like
available
with the codifier, has a child and is perfectly happy single parenting.
Does not want your opinion. Does not want you to know the child.
Nope.
It's not
unless I ask for it.
Perfect.
Nope. I don't want to know.
Perfect. At the top of this, I referred to as a lesbrarian. I cannot take credit for it. It is something you just shared with me. So you're a librarian, which is so cool, and I know it's a long time passion of yours, and you've been a librarian since I know you, which is a very long time. Recently, and I'm gonna have like 2 more things, then we're gonna start to wrap ourselves up here. But you told me what is the club's name? It's the Diversity Club?
It's called the Diversity Club. Yep. So the city actually, New York City actually had this great guy working with the schools through the mayor's office as the LGBT liaison to the schools, and he created this grant for identity-based student clubs. And so you could apply, say, this is what I want to do with my kids. And because it was identity-based, it was open to everything and anything. So like if you wanted to have, so we have a diversity club, which encompasses everything, right? We talk about sexuality and we talk about LGBTQ issues, but we talk about issues of race and ethnicity and religion and being accepting and how they need to be upstanders. And so my kids wanted to continue to meet virtually, obviously. So obviously I kept meeting with them. We used to meet after school on Wednesdays. So I'd had this club. This is the second or third year I'd had the club. But I've been in this school for 11 years and I've been teaching for 18. So when I first started teaching, I was in the very closeted, keeping to myself, right? So
sexual.
Yes, as far as I knew. So I've never come out to students before. I've figured that they figured it out because they would come talk to me. So like, I felt like Don't Ask, Don't Tell worked in that way. I never made myself feel bad about it. And then my kids in this group were like struggling when it came to June. And one of my kids said, I can't believe it's June and my first Pride is in quarantine and there's no parade and there's nowhere for me to go. And normally the city has a Queens parade, a Brooklyn parade, a city parade. So even if my kids weren't allowed to go into the city, they could have gone to the Queens parade. And I was like, you know what, we're going to, and one of them started to talk about, and they talked about their parents and how like their parents had a hard time. And I have, you know, recent immigrant parents and other families who were just like, didn't tell their kids directly because their kids didn't come out to them, but would say things that the kids were like, oh, I can't come out to my parents. And so I thought about my experience with my parents, even as a 28-year-old. And I was like, I have to tell them this story. And I did. And they were like this. Like they never were so quiet in a Google Meets as they were when I told my story. And they were like, that was the best story ever. Thank you so much. And I was like, well, I just wanted you to know. And I hope it helps that like, it's trite, but like it does really get better. And
it does. It really does. And I think that's cool. And I think you might be the only teacher in the middle of this pandemic that came out to a group of students via Zoom. So nothing else you have like that title. Last little thing, this old thing, right? Heading back to school. You have a little guy. How do you feel? Right? We got the word. Like I'm a teacher, like I have anything to do with it. I'm not going back to school. My kid isn't in school. So
right.
Not my backyard.
Nope.
But, you know, how are you feeling about it?
I'm a little nervous. I think it's hard for us in New York to gauge what it's going to be like because we're in such a different situation, right? Like we had our big scare was March and April. Our insanity was way back then, and we have been so good since. And these other places that have been opening up haven't looked like, they're not as flat as we are. You know, they're still spiking. They still have crazy cases everywhere. Like those kids in Georgia that tested positive came into school positive, right? Like school didn't make them sick. They came in sick. So I know that my school and the DOE is working really hard to make sure that everybody's safe. I worry a little bit as somebody who sees many more kids. So one of the things they've talked about is like keeping the cohort small and like this one teacher with this one group. But if I'm seeing all these different groups of kids, my exposure is different. And I think my biggest worry though is that he has 3 different caregivers during the week, all of whom are over 60. So like not one of them would want to hear that they are or that they're in any kind of risk group because believe me, my parents are 2 of those people, and trying to tell them in the spring that they were at risk was like, we're not at risk. We're totally healthy. I was like, you're 70. That makes you at risk. That's my biggest thing. Like, am I going to bring him to them to watch for the day and then I go to school and like, God forbid that. So I'm hopeful that because our cases are so low and we're trying to open so carefully, it'll be okay. Nobody knows. Uncharted territory for everyone.
It is, and it's, you know, it's something that's become so opinion based, and it really shouldn't be. You know, the only thing you can do is look at numbers and feel some sense of pride of what our state has accomplished.
Yeah.
I think that's cool, and you know, I think everybody's just knocking on every piece of wood around them, saying like, let's hope that it's so low that this doesn't blow up in our faces. So fingers crossed on that. I'm gonna ask one final question, and then we're gonna shut it down and wrap it up. What is one thing you wish you knew before becoming a parent that you know now?
It's funny because I think people, like my smart answer is
Your smart answer.
I wish I knew that at 14 14 months old, my kid could have a tantrum. That's what I wish I knew. I thought I had until at least 2 or 3 years old, but my kid is arching his back and crying when I take something away. Like, where is this personality coming from? But I think the other answer is like, there's so much that people say you don't know until you're there, and you like roll your eyes when you're not a parent and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. And you're either upset about it or offended, or you're like, well, that's stupid. Of course I can understand. You don't absolutely do not understand anything. You don't understand how tired you can be. You don't understand how you can push through the most insane thing, like that zombie time when the kid's an amoeba and you're just trying to keep it, like, you're really just in survival mode. Like, how did I get through the day? Did I sleep? I don't know. Maybe. I didn't even, like, I wouldn't even pull the covers up because I was just always,
Katie always says that. She's like, I don't remember the first, like, 3 months of her life.
No. That's why I took so many pictures. My sister was like, all you used to do is stare at him. Like, I was just in disbelief that he was even here. I was like, no way.
That's my baby. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I would like to say I wish I knew stuff, but people try to tell you stuff, but you don't get it.
No, you don't.
Nobody warned me how bad the recovery from labor would be, but I'm kind of glad they didn't tell me that. Nobody needs to know.
You should tell people that. It's like, actually I shouldn't say that. I guess Katie has said, she's like, I wish somebody would have told me.
I said that then, but now I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, I think people would be really scared. But listen, thank you for doing this. I mean, I just appreciate you telling your story. And again, I'm amazed by you, and it's so cool, and it's so nice catching up with you. And thank you for being here. And thank you guys for watching Shit Moms Won't Say. Please be sure to follow us on all kinds of social media. I will post it at the end of this. And if you have a cool story, again, I want this show to represent moms of all shapes, sizes, colors, whatever it may be. Please feel free to reach out to me. I only have so many people in my circle, and I want to make sure everybody's represented. So thank you again, and have a great night.
Good night.
Night. Oh.
Shit moms won't say.